Okay, good morning. I'm delighted to welcome everybody to Tim Bond, who's the head of Insight, and he's going to be delivering a very interesting seminar on the future of B2B, delivering customer value in this new normal, as we're currently hearing a lot of. And in this, he's going to just sort of tell us how do we deliver customers' experiences that they value in this new normal. Putting the customer first is the surefire way to successful engagement for today and tomorrow. And he'll just be looking at the latest consumer sentiment and trends, which I think is going to be really very interesting for everybody. I'm delighted to say, actually, that after talking to Tim just before we came on, we do actually have our own version of Mr. Bond, because I discovered that Tim's middle name is James. So I think there's a consequence that if nobody's paying attention to this, that we do have our own 007 here this morning. So welcome, Tim. I'm looking forward to this. And as I say to the audience, if you do have questions, use the chat facility and Tim will try and engage as he goes along or at the end. So Tim, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the seminar. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. So yeah, as mentioned, my name's Tim Bond. I'm the head of Insight at the Data and Marketing Association, and I'm here to talk to you about the future of B2B and kind of what business customers might potentially look like and some of the key areas in a post-pandemic economy. First of all, so some background on the Data and Marketing Association. We really are the driving force behind intelligent marketing and the champions of the ways that things should be done. We believe in the rich fusion of technology, diverse talent, creativity and insight underpinned by customer-focused principles as defined in our code, the core tenet of which you can see on your screen here. Our membership, well, it's comprised of over 1,000 businesses around the UK, made up of both brands, agencies, and marketing technology or service providers. So really kind of tripartite across the key stakeholders in our industry. In terms of what we offer, we have a range of membership services and community opportunities, from our best practice guide to our almost 100 events per year, most of which are virtual now, obviously, but returning to some kind of new normal, we'll have in-person events as well. And also industry insights, the likes of which I'm going to talk to you about today. We also have a full range of training available from our world-renowned Institute of Data and Marketing, the IDM. They serve both on and, in a normal world, offline training, but also short and long form. So anything from a couple of hours to kind of multi-day full diplomas. They're delivered also by leading practitioners within the industry as well, so people who are actually doing what they're teaching. We're also helping to bring the next generation of talent into our industry through our DMA talent team. That's through mentorship programs and workshops, and also working with governments and universities to make sure that next generation is coming through that our industry needs. We're really pushing the data and marketing industry forward to meet the needs of people today and tomorrow. So you can find out about that and much more, as you can see on this slide, at our website, dma.org.uk, or feel free to ask any questions or get in touch with me afterwards as well. My details will be at the end. So returning to today's topic and the future of B2B, on what these customers will look like in the pandemic, in a post-pandemic world. I want to start with what the new normal might start to look like. So we can all acknowledge that our daily lives are almost unrecognizable from just a few months ago, although that few months has very quickly become half a year plus now already. But how many of the changes that we're all experiencing today will translate into whatever the new normal looks like? And how will this impact B2B brands and their customer experiences in particular? Initially, we'll look at where we've got to date. Then I'll look at some of the key long-term trends I believe are impacting B2B. that have been tracked by Foresight Factory, our research partner, over the last few years, looking at how these have been impacted by coronavirus, and then also what B2B brands can do in response. So to begin with, we've been tracking the concerns of the data and marketing industry in particular since March of this year, when the first real lockdown happened. And you can see that over that time, there have been some shifts in terms of the concerns. But the constant has been the majority have some concern, albeit lessening prior to the most recent restrictions. So over the summer, we started to see some kind of positivity come back. But I think I would expect this to go back up when we field it again in early November. These concerns are also specifically focused on the economic impact of the virus to their business as well, not their kind of personal safety, although obviously that's been high as well and widely documented. And it also makes sense, this economic concern, when we look at the impact on revenues over this time. These have dropped to almost half pre-pandemic levels and remain at only just over 2/3 as of September, when we last fielded this survey. All in all, clearly a major risk to all the economy, but to B2B in particular, as many respondents in the survey have pointed out that government support has overlooked this vital part of the economy. For example, while hospitality and other consumer-facing industries may be being offered help by government, the suppliers and the B2B side that are actually kind of powering those hospitality experiences through all the different services and products they might be providing to them may not have actually seen the same level of support as the consumer-facing equivalent. Thinking about how B2B businesses even sell in a kind of COVID-safe way, I've got some figures here from a recent McKinsey study of B2B decision makers specifically, and they point to some interesting shifts. First, that up to a quarter, that's 15 to 25%, as you can see here, of businesses are still conducting in-person meetings with suppliers. One has to assume this is with social distancing guidelines too, but still higher than I would have expected. However, the majority say they actually prefer the remote human, the remote human interactions like we're having today, or potentially digital self-service interactions over in person, citing things like ease of scheduling, saving on travel expenses, and safety as the top 3 reasons. So interesting there as well that not just COVID safety concerns, but actually the ease around arranging these meetings and the lack of expense as well. All in all, 75% of B2B decision makers believe the new, mostly remote sales model is as effective or more so than what they had in place prior to COVID-19. Now, who would have expected that 6 to 9 months ago? All these seem to indicate the turning of the tide, that digital self-service and remote sales calls are likely to become the norm, while in-person may return post-pandemic. But we could never see it return to quite the same levels as we saw before. Not least because other research shows us that buyers actually prefer these options to necessarily in-person as well. So how is coronavirus changing some of the key long-term trends of recent years, and how can B2B businesses pivot, or even should they? Here's where our research partner Foresight Factory, who are a global consumer trends agency, they've been tracking their 80+ trends amid the pandemic to understand which are in flux as a result, and whether that's in the short or the long term, that's the Y or vertical axis you can see here, or whether they've been accelerated or even decelerated as a result of the current conditions, that's the X or horizontal axis. Now, this is just a snapshot of the trends that they see shifting at the moment, and obviously these are more consumer driven, but I'd like to focus on a couple that I believe are directly impacting B2B organizations. So even though they're consumer trends, there is something to learn. And these that you can see here, I've chosen 5 areas I believe are the most pertinent to you as B2B marketers and business leaders. For each, I'll share what the trend is, what's happening to it amid the kind of pandemic, and how the business can act to support or react to this trend as well. So first up, we have presence-free living. Across our daily lives, from work to play, education to hobbies, the digital alternatives to physical presence have been challenging the need to be anywhere in person. Now, this has been growing over recent years, so even before the lockdown, but clearly during the pandemic, this has been highly energized. As millions have continued to quarantine or self-isolate or work from home, many have had to cancel or postpone in-house events, whether it's live events and social gatherings or simply working remotely on a day-to-day basis. As you can see, I am as well. This has also caused a spike in demand for remote commerce and working and leisure options, so all facets of our lives. Beyond just video calls, which we've all become very accustomed to, we've started to see things like telemedicine really spike, and also even virtual clubbing and quizzes as well from more consumer-facing and consumer groups. So brands and consumer groups. I think we'd expect this to have a long-term impact as well. A lasting legacy of COVID-19 will surely be the realization among B2B customers, as well as we saw right at the beginning, that it's okay to dial in remotely, and that being remote is not the compromise it perhaps was once seen as being. This is not to say that the world will always choose the remote option. Virtual socializing, for example, will likely dip as in-person meetups are once again allowed, but growing familiarity and continued concerns about safety will push people to question the need for their presence. And physical presence may never be given as freely as it once was again. So lastly, how can brands act to kind of capitalize on this trend? Here I've got 3 areas. First is to eliminate the kind of presence pain points and consider presence-free options. Target processes and interactions across your customer journey that still require a physical presence. Could convenient and efficient alternatives extricate the customer from a real-world interaction or visit and experience? Is there an easy way to offer them that presence-free option that maybe you haven't considered before? Second here is, are your customers unfamiliar with presence-free options? Maybe use this opportunity to teach them. Consider using this time to give consumers who are unfamiliar with online services you may already offer, or potentially are launching amid the pandemic, assistance to use them. This could be in the form of tutorials or one-to-one walkthroughs. It could also be a way of acquiring new customers as part of the process as well, because you're able to offer them the full customer experience across these first 2 points virtually, where before they may have expected to have to be there in person. Last here is making digital channels do more. Which new features is your brand looking into? From AR tools to Zoom consultations to shoppable live streams, can you offer the remote customer? Can you offer remote customers, and what can you offer them in order to differentiate your brand and business from your competitors as they are all coming more towards the digital kind of platforms that are on offer? The next trend here kind of is around, as it says, human encounters. Consumers, as we often see in the research that we do, want interactions with brands that feel smart and positive, but most importantly, that still feel human. That's whether it's with another human being or actually with any kind of automation or AI. Now, in terms of the pandemic status, any of the eagle-eyed amongst you may have seen or may know, if you've got a truly photographic memory, this didn't actually appear on the previous graph. But given the McKinsey figures that I shared right at the beginning, and obviously the first trend as well that I've already touched on, I think it's important to take note that this may well be changing as well. Whether it's today or post-pandemic, the dramatic increase in digital and remote interactions will change customer expectations fundamentally. I also think this has a long-term impact. The goal of so much customer experience innovation is to improve speed and efficiency and to enable the customer's seamless flow through the journey, some of which we were just talking about with the previous trend. However, quick and efficient can also feel clinical, cold, and forgettable. Convenience is key, but people also want commercial interactions that feel warm and empathetic and that can solve the messy issues that imperfect humans create. The coronavirus pandemic has accelerated the need for all brands to provide empathetic digital interactions. As online channels become the norm, even the traditionally tech-phobic customers are getting involved. But people still want the human touch, whether that's online or offline. Brands are under pressure to provide the human touch at scale in an omni-channel world spanning stories, sites, and smart speakers, just to name a few. Online customers are interacting with conversational tools like chat messaging, for example, that emulates human interactions. In their homes, people are starting to warm to voice-powered interfaces that you can speak to, like Alexa and all of those. But in certain situations, nothing can beat the flesh and blood of another person. In fact, 70% of consumers agree that when making a complaint about a product or service, they prefer to speak to a human being. How will the need for warm human interactions be met in the future? Technology's growing ability to infer customers' emotional states promises a future of highly tailored customer experience journeys. However, emotion-sharing commercial arrangements will feel novel, potentially even dystopian, for many years to come. More likely is a future where customers' existing personal data, including things like dwell time or purchase history, is used to power empathetic interactions with brand representatives, be that a human, a chatbot, or something we haven't even created yet. And where there are no high-tech solutions or data available, old-fashioned service with a smile will still have the power to help brands stand out. A lot of this around loyalty and humanity and compassion actually are key themes in a project that we're working on at the moment that's due to launch on the 10th of November at our Customer Engagement Summit. It's the latest version of our How to Win Trust and Loyalty research as part of our customer engagement content stream at the DMA. So you can find out more about that at our site as well, 10th of November, as I mentioned. In terms of how brands can act, we have 4 areas here. First is the need to show your brand's human side. You can do this potentially just by giving your fellow workers and colleagues a voice. While functional characteristics are decisive drivers of customer decision-making, brands can emphasize the human touch in messaging activity to reassure customers that if and when required, emotionally intelligent staff stand ready to assist. Consider using genuine employees in your marketing activity, for example, to show your human side, and to add warmth and even extra clout altogether, more functional messaging. The second here is to build emotional intelligence into service touchpoints and stress test them for messy human problems. Whether delivered via AI or humans, or as I say, that's something we haven't even come up with yet, ensure that your brand can meet growing expectations of emotionally intelligent service that can easily deal with messy issues. Where, for example, the customer is giving contradictory information seemingly, or is explaining a really complex scenario, as well as more routine requests and complaints where we already see that most customers are willing to use the kind of automated functionality. Recognize when interactions require a human brain or a digital counterpart that's able to kind of deal with them. The third here is a slight word of warning about signposting the non-human as well. Brands must be clear about bots that have human attributes. Google got in a bit of trouble back in May 2018 with their duplex offering when it was booking restaurants, and there's a video online of them booking a hair appointment for somebody, and workers on the other end of that phone weren't able to tell that was a human making the reservation, and that it was actually a bot, not a person. Google has now revealed, and since revealed, that the duplex will announce itself as an automated call at the start of every interaction. But customers may need help as some of these smart assistants improve to understand their presence, and with their developing humanity, understand that they are kind of an artificial element within their lives. The fourth area here is also to maintain that human side. Such an approachable human tone of, an approachable human tone of voice, even when communicating across digital channels. I strongly recommend that you abandon clinical or automated messaging, especially where a warmer touch could encourage greater engagement and dwell time as well. So the next trend here is around, as it says, maximizing behavior. So price and brand loyalty are coming under intense pressure as tech-savvy, bargain-hunting customers seek the best deal at every touch point. This is something we've also explored in the DMA's customer engagement, how to win trust and loyalty research that I mentioned, and the next edition is coming out on the 10th of November. During the pandemic, this is another one that's highly energized. Lockdown, furloughs, layoffs, and stalling global trade are dealing a severe blow to economies across the world. So you can expect customers to lean into the maximizing skills in response to this latest economic crisis. As stockpiling behavior starts to subside and pandemic shopping routines become established, customers will stringently apply a value filter to everyday spend. That's both across their personal lives and their work lives. Price sensitivity and category switching behavior will undoubtedly rise as well. Customers will also turn to digital tools to spend smart against the backdrop of economic uncertainty. Many people are already feeling or are bracing themselves for the economic impact of the pandemic in the long term as well. In the UK, research from ONS earlier this year found that a little under 1 in 4 adults said the coronavirus was affecting their household finances, meaning that 3/4 are seeing an impact. Among these adults, 73% reported reduced income, while 25% said they were unable to save as usual. Over 4 in 10, that was 41% of UK adults, also expected their financial position to get a little or a lot worse over the next 12 months, while 8 in 10 expect the general economic situation in the UK to worsen as well. Now, this may well be a more short-term impact as well. Maximizing behavior could be that kind of shorter term, but it could also stay energized through this year and into 2021, even as economic growth starts to return. This is because employment, confidence, and income growth will likely lag behind top-line GDP performance. And many will remain financially cautious for as long as COVID-19 presents a threat to our lives and our livelihoods. Whether we face a short, sharp recession or a deep, longer slump, expect spending during 2020 to remain weak and characterized by an intent on maximizing every penny. However, post-pandemic and post-downturn, I would expect price sensitivity to weaken and other factors, including sustainability and purpose, to feature more prominently in the value equation. I'd also expect to see customers emerge with new maximizing tools in their arsenal. For example, group buying services, smart shopping assistants that purchase on the shopper's behalf when the price is right, and also short-term rental options. All consumer-facing experiences that could become lasting legacies of the coronavirus-triggered downturn, and ones that B2B may need to take note of as well. So how to act? There are really two key areas here for me. One is to reposition and protect premium offerings for the pandemic shopper. As non-essential spend comes under pressure, consider closely aligning premium offers with other customer needs energized by the pandemic. For example, explore how positioning can be adapted to capitalize on people having to work from home. Also consider repackaging premium products and services into more bite-sized experiences, giving existing or potential customers a premium hit at a fraction of the cost. The second one here is to embrace new engagement models that will appeal to the maximizing customer as well. For example, are there new models you could offer smaller businesses that are struggling during this time? Maybe localized group buying, for example. And could you offer more flexible forms of engagement, including pay-as-you-go or rental services, to encourage customers to take that plunge and make purchases, or even to put during the pandemic, or even potentially offering things like pause options during the pandemic period as well. This all kind of leads on to this next trend around building resilience. So we've all enjoyed relative economic and political stability over the past decade. These include the rise and fall of political movements, some economic disruption, AI transformation of the workforce, and the effect of climate change and the power of technology and that it has on our lives. But 2020 has let's say, been different, and has certainly changed that as well. Even paling complaints about 2019 and 2018 and 2017 paling into comparison when we come to complain about prior years. People naturally crave personal confidence in an uncertain world. So looking ahead to an unknown future, they start to think about how best to prepare for a rainy day. During the pandemic, this is somewhere in that middle range, I think, in terms of being energized. It's not quite extreme, but it's not really low. It's definitely pressing forward. The pandemic has been proof that our lives, livelihoods, and routines can be upended overnight. As economic prospects and concerns us all, and the potential of further lockdowns linger, customers will respond with resilience-boosting measures that help them feel more in control of the future. Some will run maybe larger than usual stockpiles of inventory, whether that's at home or at work, while others will keep spare cash with an increased precautionary savings to safeguard against future economic hardship. As employment becomes more precarious, some may find it necessary to develop new skills to remain employable. Not everyone will be prepared or able to pivot towards more secure and profitable career paths, but the economic downturn will force many to reassess how resilient their livelihoods really are. And this could really have a long-term impact as well. Expect a customer mindset characterized by the need for proactive resilience building and shock-proof existence to remain for some time post-pandemic. As infectious disease simply joins the list of threats and worries that we have about the future. The difference being this now feels like something we need to prepare for because it's literally happened this year. An enduring outcome of the crisis could be precautionary saving, more proactive financial planning and stockpiling behaviour. While many people and businesses are unable to save during the economic downturn, expect many to make precautionary saving a priority as soon as financially possible. Similarly, many households and businesses will look to ensure plentiful supplies of essentials. So how much will be enough? Another enduring outcome could be a greater focus on improving health resilience. Fear of further outbreaks, as well as the mounting well-being threats posed by climate change, could become a significant driver of aspirations to be healthier. Now, in terms of how to act, I've got 3 areas for this one again. First is to create a brand story that really endures throughout these challenges. Tell your own brand story of resilience and fortitude to assure your customers that you'll be with them for the foreseeable future as well. The next is to create what we've called here a kind of prepper-friendly content and guidance. As preparation and planning become more valued traits both during and after the pandemic, brands can share relevant expertise and guidance via content marketing and personal planning tools as well. So you need to understand which of those kind of prepper skills and cautionary tales can your brand help with and impart knowledge for. And lastly is helping preppers to stay on track as well. If your brand is fortunate enough to have sight of your customers' long-term goals and concerns, then incentivize them to stay on track. Gently nudge them with prompts and reminders and reward them for meeting their personal preparation goals as well and continuing to engage with the brand maybe during the pandemic and challenging times. So the final trend here is, as you can see, call to be kind. Compassion is a key ingredient of people's happiness and purpose. Can your brand promote and extend kindness in an increasingly polarized world? I've mentioned compassion already in terms of the research we're releasing in a couple of weeks, but it really is a growing trend across all consumers. And actually so during the pandemic, this has been highly energized. And back in 2019, 44% of global consumers said that they strongly feel they go out of their way to help others. Indeed, kindness is an aspiration for many. Earlier this year, 38% of Generation Z, that's those aged 12 to 19, selected being a good person as one of their top 3 future aspirations. A collective crisis energizes collective compassion. With the burden of COVID-19 falling especially hard on certain age, racial, and socioeconomic groups, many people feel an obligation to support those most affected by the pandemic. A global army of public-spirited people and businesses is rallying to help the most vulnerable in society. Giving to charitable causes, signing up to community groups, volunteering their time to distribute supplies, and much more besides. It's not just consumers who have been mobilized either. Brands are showing their solidarity too. Some are donating meals to frontline workers, while others are raising funds for the needy, largely in a bid to underscore their commitment to kindness and this idea of compassion. Now, in terms of how long this may last, this could well be somewhere a short-term impact, but I'd like to hope that it's going to be more mid-term and push longer. Overall, this outpouring of altruism one has to kind of be realistic, likely ebb slightly once the pandemic and the conditions abate. As people return to their regular routines and as brands focus their efforts on rebuilding their businesses, the number of formal charitable initiatives will almost certainly decrease. Even though many ramifications of the pandemic and the inequalities it's exposed will persist for a long time to come. On a personal level, some people will want to continue doing good, especially after experiencing the feel-good factor engendered by acts of kindness. However, they will likely refocus their attention on other non-coronavirus causes. So is this something your business can support, whether through employees, customers, or local communities? Future acts of kindness will also depend on the severity of the economic downturn. In the event of a hard exit from the pandemic, people may not be able to give their money or time as freely, despite their best intentions. Resource and commitment-like ways to demonstrate compassion and small acts of kindness will be welcomed by many. However, expect kindness to remain a key measure of status even long after the pandemic has waned. So again, I've got a trio of suggestions here on how brands can act. The first is being a compassionate brand. Building your brand around the seemingly simple ethos of kindness will garner appeal, especially during the pandemic. According to the Edelman Trust Barometer and their special report of brand trust and the coronavirus pandemic from this year, 37% of global respondents have recently started using a new brand because of the innovative or compassionate way they have responded to the virus outbreak. Can altruism and coronavirus related initiatives cement the loyalty of your existing customers and help you acquire new ones as well? The second area here is to embrace thoughtful messaging that chimes with the current climate. Be mindful of people's sentiment during these trying times. Consider carefully the wisdom of making a hard sell and use marketing initiatives that are focused on products or services that can support consumers through the pandemic. Last but by no means least is prepare for a return to selling as well. When the pandemic abates, and as we've all adapted to the next normal, whatever that looks like, brands will need to consider how to pivot from compassionate marketing initiatives to more functional messaging again. How can your brand do this without seeming insensitive or insincere during that switch? Coronavirus has changed a lot, but whether these changes will ultimately stick, we'll have to wait and see. What will be the key for B2B brands is the ability to understand your customers, being able to deliver data-driven customer experiences, and being willing to adapt and shift as the world around us continues to change. Because while the trends that come to fruition may differ from the few that I've shared today, the one certainty is that the world will change, while other areas may well stay the same. The trick is to know where the shifts are happening and being able to meet your customers there. That's all from me. As I say, there's this and a lot more available at our website, the dma.org.uk, and you can see the link to the research section of our site here on the site. You can also reach out to me here if you have any specific questions. Otherwise, I'll leave these details up for a little bit, and if there are any questions, please do feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, so the only question I can see, or the only comment I can see in the chat, is to say hello back to Tessa Kind. Thank you for saying hi. I will stay on for a few more minutes in case there are any questions, but otherwise I'll say thank you for your time, and I hope it was informative. And yeah, if there's anything else, do feel free to reach out. Question from Matteo Baroldo. Apologies for the pronunciation, but it says thinking of a mobile app, do you see a trend to use platforms, or are businesses developing their own app? Just to check, so there are sort of two ways of answering that. Is one, I presume, Matteo, you're asking about going either through an existing mobile service or developing your own dedicated one. I think certainly there are kind of two different answers to that in the consumer and B2B. I think in the consumer space, we saw a kind of initial spike a few years ago in terms of kind of app development, but I think as the ecosystems started to become more disparate, it became frankly painful to have to develop for all of them. So then we saw this kind of switch to a different level of coding where you're able to create almost kind of mobile app experiences. So they're actually run through browsers that then enables you to plug them into potentially dedicated apps as well. But that's getting slightly technical. We saw that a lot in the consumer space. I think in B2B, we tend to see a lot more use of, particularly with sales funnels and things, using off-the-shelf solutions, because there's going to be enough that you're able to tweak within there and rebrand yourself, that you're able to then use them for your case, and then also plug them into existing kind of sales structures as well. So whether that's using your own kind of in-house CRM or one of the multitude that are available on the market as well, to make sure that you've got full visibility of that sales funnel, and then can start to understand that customer at their kind of at their end through the app as a touch point as well. Great, thanks, Matteo. Lovely. Well, sorry, excuse me. Well, I'll just give it till 2:45, but yeah, if there are any other questions, otherwise I will sign off then and say thanks again. Thanks, Tessa. That's sorry. I'm not sure if everybody's able to see the comments, but Tessa Kind has just replied about estate agents and seeing a lot more requests for WhatsApp viewings and virtual viewings, and that they're obviously happy to oblige. I think that's definitely a big shift and really a necessity. Right to that trend I was talking about kind of safety as well. And those virtual experiences. So I think WhatsApp's one solution. I have heard of other ones being used, and I think certainly it's kind of the way that estate agents. But I can imagine that could be applied to many other brands as well. Even in a format, I'm sure there are some around that would also require no kind of personal information or phone numbers to be exchanged potentially as well, or even starting to do recordings. So you can show somebody around a house or have a virtual tour, a virtual kind of initial show, and then offer them a WhatsApp kind of a live one as a further follow-up as well. And then Steve Bennett's come in to say, what do you think about big brands overplaying their social caring aspects and perhaps making it too patronizing or irrelevant to their product or service? He was thinking particularly of TV adverts in recent months. What should the balance be here? It's a very interesting point you make. I think there is around that call to be kind and an idea of compassion. There is definitely a sincerity that needs to be struck I think consumers are a lot more savvy than maybe we give them credit for sometimes, or certainly some people do, and that there are brands who, in fact, I saw a quite amusing collection of different ads that had been interspliced from various different brands. So not naming any particular one, but it appeared to be seamless. There was kind of the people at home kind of sat by themselves, and then there was the kind of empty streets, and some of the car brands had the car driving around the empty streets, which I'm not quite sure why that was happening, but anyway, I'm not sure where they were going if they're not allowed out. But I think there are a lot of brands that did knee-jerk and put a lot of the same messages out there, just the kind of "we're here." But then I think there were some others that were offered a lot more sincere and took it as an opportunity to actually show their customers. I won't name the brands, but there were a couple of one in particular, a bank or building society that used their customers' stories and really created ads that shared their stories and their experiences, and tried to build them out of that. Now, there was also a large supermarket that did a frankly terribly insincere equivalent with a bunch of actors, but made it look really bad, it just did not land at all. So I think there is a need for you to understand what your brand is, and be able to stand by what you're saying now, before, during, and after such a significant issue as now. There's also not necessarily a need for your brand to say much. If you're not being affected, we've seen just in the last couple of months some really good kind of PR stories from some major retailers who've seen massive spikes in terms of their sales and have actually handed back some of that furlough cash. That's not a communication to a brand at all, but that is acting with kindness and with responsibility and with compassion, because compassion isn't just personal. As you'll see in the research that I say we're launching in a couple of weeks, there are two levels to it. One is personal compassion, which is understanding the individual and caring for that individual person on a human-to-human level. But there's also societal compassion that brands and businesses can show. And that's actually being a good corporate citizen, being a good environmental citizen as a business as well. And that's where I think brands can kind of showcase that without the need to, as you say, put together a same as rather insincere TV ad. There are many more ways to communicate with customers than a TV ad. Well, great. In that case, I will bid everybody adieu and say thank you very much for the couple of questions. I hope I answered them sufficiently, and thank you all for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. It looks like a really interesting rest of the lineup.